Hello, and welcome to HCA Presents the Festival Circuit. I am your host, KB, and thank you for joining this brand new episode. We're at episode number 2, the halfway point for the 2020 Sundance Film Festival. One of our co hosts is actually unable to make it due to some technical difficulties. So I'm so sad, but I do have Emma here. So it is going to be us ladies. Yay!
Ladies' night.
Ladies' night on the festival circuit. So thank you so much, Emma, for joining. Really, really appreciate it. And you know what? The floor is yours. Please tell everyone kind of what you're up to, where they can find your work, all of the.
Of course. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to talk all about Sundance. My brain somehow has not oozed out of my head yet, so I'm having a great time. I am on Twitter at Emma_Sassic. That's where you guys can keep up with some of my reviews coming out through Next Best Picture and Mama's Geeky. And I'm also putting up all of my stuff on Letterboxd, and that is at Emma Sassic. So I'm talking about movies all the time, every time.
Yes, love it, love it, love it. So, everyone, please follow Emma so that you can follow not only her Sundance coverage, but everything that she does apart from that. So, we're just going to dive in. So, first, since this is the halfway point, Emma, tell me, how is your festival experience going so far? How many films have you seen? Is it everything that you expected?
Honestly, I had really high hopes for Sundance this year. Last year, I did the virtual experience. Things went really, really well. It was a great kind of like first introduction to Sundance, just because I've never physically gone there before. So even though it was sad that it had to be virtual, it was still great to kind of be part of the environment with like the little lobbies that they had to talk about films. And so far this year, it's been awesome too. I've had the chance to see 20 films so far. Probably, I know I'll probably get a couple more in there, and we'll see about some of the award winners. But it's been super smooth. It's been a really interesting mix of films too, with a lot of well-known actors and stars that we love and know, and some new people that I'm being introduced to, especially some first-time filmmakers. So I feel like all of that is what adds to the Sundance charm. So I've been having a great time. How have you been enjoying things?
Oh my gosh. Well, Emma, first let me say, I am sad that you have not experienced it in person. That's something that we
Yeah.
talked about at length on the first episode when I spoke with John and Kristen. And, I love, love, love Sundance in person. It is absolutely hands down one of my top 3 favorite film festivals to experience in
Top
person,
three.
just because it is truly like the place where dreams come true. I feel like if you're a filmmaker or you want to get into this business, if you're a writer, even if you're in film acquisition, I just think that it's such a unique festival to be a part of, and it's so wonderful. But I say all that to say, the Sundance virtual experience is still top tier. So, I think that the app runs super smooth, which I absolutely love. The only thing that I'm actually having issues with this one time this year are subtitles. I can't get closed captioning to work on my Apple TV device this year. And that's
Yeah.
really the only issue that I'm having, is that like one technical issue. But otherwise, I've seen right now, I think my film count is at 15. And I have seen a bunch of films, some that I enjoyed, some that I didn't, which we're going to get into in a little bit. But it has been a really smooth festival experience. And so I am trying to kind of fashion my festival, because I mentioned this to you earlier, but I had like a bunch of TV stuff in the middle of the festival that I had to
Yeah.
do. So it's kind of nice to get back to the films. And then at the end of my festival experience, I really like to spend like my last day doing shorts. Because I really do. Last year was actually the first year that I like truly gave short the attention that they deserve. And
Mhm.
so this year I really want to plan to kind of spend the end doing shorts, because I haven't seen any of them yet. But it's been a great festival so far. I really cannot complain. I have seen a lot of things that have really kind of sparked some additional creative things in my mind, and then also have sparked a lot of robust conversations in my critics group group chat. So
That's a very nice way to put it.
yes, yes. Because there's always something happening in the group chat when we all see these films at once and we're trying to figure out what happened here. I mean, like
You're
sometimes
just
it's
like,
just filling in blanks, and then other times it's like, okay, I need to dive and into this and decompress a little bit about this film.
anybody, please tell me what was that?
Yes, yes. Sometimes it's exactly that. Like, hey, okay, what was that? Are we
Let's
sure about
chat.
that? What does this mean? So, anything else you want to share about your experience before we get to the juicy part of diving into the ones that we enjoyed and some that we didn't?
I also have to admit, I have kind of neglected the shorts too. You know, sometimes when the festivals are like really front loaded with lots of premieres and like the dramatic competitions, like those are all the films that sometimes you're like, oh my God, I have to see this. I need to see all of this. So I'm hoping to spend the last few days as my second screenings and pretty much all of my premieres have vanished at this point. I'm hoping to spend a little bit more time with that, maybe even catch a few more documentaries. I also haven't seen as many as I have in years past, but I did get to a really sweet one last night that hopefully I'll be able to talk a little bit more about in depth later. But just still trying to get as much things, seen before all of this ends. It's always sad those last few days because you're like scrambling, but you still have so many things to watch, but it's been great so far. Love the films that we've seen.
Oh, and I meant to ask, have you done any interviews for any of the films that you've seen?
You know what? I'm hoping to do one in the future. So I watched the Lucy and Desi documentary on Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, and their daughter Lucy Arnaz actually lives in the Palm Springs community. So I'm hoping to maybe chat with her at some point in the future. Obviously, still nothing's concrete right now, but would love to kind of hear a little bit more her on just her mother and father, more so than what was already shared in the documentary.
Ooh, well, I hope that that comes sooner than later for you.
Yes.
I've actually had some interesting conversations. So I had a chance to talk to Sterling K. Brown and
Oh,
Regina Hall about Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul.
oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, let me tell you, they are hilarious. And this isn't my first time talking to Sterling, but they are hilarious in the film and hilarious in real life and always hilarious in an interview and such a good time. So that was really, really great conversation. And then also, I actually had an interview today with Kama Bell about We Need to Talk About Bill Cosby, the director of
Oh,
that. And
wow.
so it's a really, really heavy
I'm
yet
sure.
important conversation and interview to have. And so I'm really looking forward to kind of spending the time to transcribe it and really handle it with care and kind of get that out as well. So
I'm so excited to read both of these and see these interviews if you post them online.
yes, yes, I will. I will. One's a video, and then one is going to be an editorial. So I'll definitely link and share. And I appreciate you, checking it out as well.
Of course.
All right. So before we dive into our reviews of Fresh and When You Finish Saving the World, Emma, kick us off with a highlight about what has been kind of one of the best films you've seen in the festival thus far, and one of the worst films you've seen thus far, and why. And don't forget to tell us a little bit about them too.
Of course. So for me, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen this on Twitter as well, my favorite film thus far has been Cha Cha Real Smooth by Cooper Raiff. It stars him and Dakota Johnson. It is his second feature film, right off the rails of, I don't know if I can say this title out loud, but I will. He did Shithouse a few years back about a college freshman trying to grapple with all of these new changes in his life when everybody else just seems to be moving on so effortlessly. That was a really great film. And I feel like Cha Cha Real Smooth is kind of like the perfect next step for him. This time around, as I said, he plays Andrew, and it's a film about post grad life and also not knowing what to do with your life, which I know for myself, that's very relatable. I graduated college just a few years back, and I'm still kind of trying to figure it all out. I know a lot of other people are in that boat as well. And so he has these big dreams, as sometimes we all do after we graduate college, after we're like feeling on top of the world. Things don't always go so well for him and for the rest of us. So he starts working at like a hot dog stand until he ultimately gets a job like party starting at bar and bat mitzvahs at his with his younger brother's friends. There he meets Dakota Johnson's character, who he and I'm sure the rest of us fall head over heels in love with. I know that I did. And we just kind of see this really beautiful chemistry between the two of them. We see this chemistry between really all of the actors on set. And I just kind of felt that it was like, you know, it was a film about life, and in recent years, I have really loved those kinds of films too, and, it just kinda speaks to, like, a specific chapter of young adulthood and, maybe even going into your 30s and still being confused about what's right and what's wrong for you, and really just trying to find yourself. So I feel like Cooper Raiff is so in tune with his emotions. He just knows how to portray them so well and so accurately. He does a fabulous job in the film. Dakota Johnson, I feel like, has given us one of her best performances. She plays a very complicated woman who, also has these ideas about what she wants in life, but maybe she's not as confident and so sure about if that's exactly what she wants. So, just really, really great dynamic between the two of them, between Dakota's daughter in the film and Andrew, and everything is just it's just so loving, this film. That's the best way to describe it. It's sweet and loving. So I can just keep talking on and on about this film. Oh, I'm sorry, KB. I can't actually hear you.
Oh, there we are.
There you
So,
are.
yeah, you know what? I told you earlier that this one is actually on my list. I cannot wait to see it, and I plan to actually watch it tomorrow, so I'll circle back with you after. But
Yes,
I have to say, like, life post grad is always so complex for a lot of different people,
it is.
and I feel like, to your point, as someone who is in their mid 30s, everyone feels like they have to have life figured out by a certain age, and I do feel like we as human beings are ever evolving, and even in your 30s still trying to figure out what the best fit is, what the best career is, and how to transform your life in the most positive of ways. So this definitely sounds like something that is right up my alley for sure. I love a good, I don't really want to call it a coming of age story, but it like
Yeah.
kind of is sort of, I mean, it's like a
Yeah,
a leaning into a coming of age story. I feel like
exactly.
coming of age stories are mostly about teenagers, kind of figuring it out. But I appreciate, stories about people figuring it out later in life, and I want to see more of that.
I know as young kids, I'm sure we all had this idea that like, oh, I'm gonna be this perfect person of myself by the time I'm 22 or something like that. And that could not be further from the truth. So I love this film that kind of tackles that age period that maybe not a whole lot of other movies tackle. Like you said, a lot of them are with the high school years or maybe like just the college years, not actually what comes to life and the rest of your life after that.
And you know what? It's so funny because there is so much more that life has to offer beyond those years. And while
Yeah.
they are pivotal, and for me, oh my gosh, I adored college, I adored undergrad, I adored grad school. I love the connections that I made, in terms of friendships, but also in terms of like the faculty that worked at my university, and the way that they really helped shape who I wanted to become career wise. But like, they don't tell you there's so many years left and so many years of adventure and life and love and learning to be had, that like life doesn't stop in your 20s. It keeps going and it gets better and better and better. Truly, truly it does. So
That's good
I'm
to
really,
know.
really excited. Yeah.
I'm in my mid-20s right now,
Oh, yes.
you hear the horror stories about turning 30, but I just kind of feel like that's where you truly do know yourself and feel like you're a little bit more guided in the path that you want to take in life. So, if you say that things are getting better, then I really have nothing to worry about.
Yes, listen, they get better, and I've only heard now that I'm in my mid-30s, I've heard, that the 40s are even better than that, and so I'm
Okay.
like, "Oh," I always look forward to getting older and aging because I just feel like there's so many valuable lessons in every single decade, and so this film really, really excites me. So I'll go ahead and share actually one that I loved because it's kinda similar. So, one of the films that I truly, truly loved this year at the Sundance Film Festival is Good Luck to You, Leo Grand. And it follows Nancy Stokes, who is portrayed by the iconic Emma Thompson, who is a 55-year-old widow, really, really just yearning for adventure, human connection, and really, honestly, just to learn how to have good sex in this age. So she meets Leo Grand, and they have like a few choice meetings that really help her expand not just her sexuality, but also really get her to open up and be more vulnerable in life and learn how to love herself and her body. It's so interesting because I adore films where we get to see, people still just trying to figure out who they are at various ages, like I just mentioned. And she's 55. She spent the majority of her life, married to this man who wasn't sexually fulfilling. And so when he passes away, she goes on this adventure to kind of get that sexual fulfillment that she has desired for over 30 years because she was with him and she spent all of her time, kind of being a mom and being a teacher and being his wife, that she really wasn't leaning into one, the person that she thought she wanted to be when she was younger, and two, just leaning into who she wants to be now. Like she's trying to figure out in this second phase of my life without this husband, who do I want to be, who do I want to grow into? And what types of physical connections and relationships do I want to have? So Leo is significantly younger, and he is portrayed by Daryl McCormack. And he is younger, he has a different lease on life, but most importantly, he's trying to teach her, the value of self love. I feel like Nancy is very self deprecating, and he tries to teach her just how to just utilize the power of her words, even to just lift herself up, and how lifting herself up just simply by complimenting herself can make her feel good about her body as well. And so they go on this journey where, she feels really drawn to him healing some places and some issues that he has when it comes to his family. And and he feels really drawn with, helping her love herself and choose herself. Because I think oftentimes with women specifically, the older that we get and the more responsibilities that we get, the less that we consider ourselves first. And she's in a position to be able to do that. And he's trying to help teach her how to put herself first. And so it's an interesting friendship. I'm going to call it a friendship because it's much less about their, kind of romantic relationship and more so about the friendship that they build along the way that kind of unites them for the long haul. They do have some really, really, really good sex, but I also think that is just kind of the transactional piece. At the core, I think, well, when the movie ended, I felt like at the core of it, they will always be friends. And I think that they could call each other and have coffee and just have a conversation about life, even at the various stages, of their lives. So, how did you feel about this movie, Emma? I know that you saw it, and it's absolutely one of my favorites just because it surprised me in all of the best kinds of ways. And it's very refreshing to kind of have a body of work that explores this topic.
I think you said everything so beautifully. I mean, I love the message of self-love at the end of the day, when it comes to this film. And like you said, a lot of times women, and I know a lot of the women in my life and my family, they're so focused on making sure that everybody else in their family is okay, that everyone is happy and healthy, that, sometimes they neglect what is most important to them, which is their happiness and their health. So I loved seeing Emma Thompson take on this role where it was a blend of comedy and drama, and it just worked so well, and it just felt so effortless. The chemistry between the two of them, um, also was really nice to look at Daryl McCormick. He is a beautiful man.
He is. And it's funny because so this film, there are only essentially like 4 people in the whole film,
Yeah.
but that's the reality. And these 2 are the central ones. And we spend the majority of the time just really looking at their connection in this hotel room. And sometimes those movies don't work, if you know what I mean, where
Mhm.
like, the entire film really hinges on you just looking at these 2 characters in this one room for an extended period of time. But I think with this particular storyline, it's absolutely perfect. Like, we actually don't need anyone else. And I think it really makes you hone in and focus on kind of the issues at hand. Now, something else I will bring up, and I'm keeping it spoiler light for this one, but I will say that, there's another component of the film that really helps to tackle and address like slut shaming and sex work. And, they're really trying to make sure that not only, people feel protected. I guess that's really the
Mhm.
best way to put it, as they should. And, like sex work being legitimate work and, women being protected and him kind of changing her perspective because she is from a different generation of the generation of, girls should cover up if they don't want anything to happen to them. And he's like, no, men should actually be held accountable. Those types of conversations are also happening in this film. And I think they're really important and they don't feel forced. They feel natural in terms of them building their friendship. And even though they're not always on the same side of the argument or conversation, they end up seeing each other's vantage points very well.
Absolutely. There's a scene toward the end where, since you mentioned she was a teacher, one of her students gets involved a little bit, and there's a kind of great connector with what you were just saying about, the slut shaming topic. So I think that so many things were done so well with this film. Just the natural progression of the conversations, as you said, and the highs and the lows that they reach during their time together. It was a joy to watch, and chemistry between the two of them is so wonderful. Emma Thompson is Emma Thompson. It's like, what more do you need?
Right, right, 100%. All right, so I'm gonna let you have the floor, and you can tell me a little bit about another film that just may not make your top 5 or
Ugh,
top 10 or top 15 of, this year's festival.
but I was having so much fun talking about the good movies. Yes, the quote unquote worst film, the one that I did not enjoy the most, it's called Babysitter. It is a Quebec film. It's very interesting. The premise is interesting, the execution, not so much. So it starts off with a middle-aged man who is described immediately, and we see him immediately as a sexist and a misogynistic man. He pranks a TV reporter who is on air. I'd like to think as more so he harasses her. And he kind of becomes the talk of the town. There are newspaper articles written about him. There is disciplinary action taken from his company. He doesn't see what he did wrong, which I guess would be very typical from this type of person. But he gets this idea that he, along with his brother, who is a journalist, they should make a book full of apologies and letters to women who they have wronged, although many of them are not ones that they know in their own lives. They mention something about, maybe I should write a letter to Beyonce, maybe I should write a letter to this actress, this model, this singer, etc. So that is one portion of this film. To add another wackier portion of this film into all of it, as he is temporarily let go from work, he is stuck at home with his girlfriend, Nadine, who is exhausted, tired. She is dealing with a infant who is crying nonstop throughout this film. So he decides to hire a babysitter named Amy. And Amy is more of like a fantasy type of person rather than an actual fully developed character and human, in my opinion. And her role, aside from being a babysitter, is to essentially help all of these characters come to their sexual realization in some way. I just don't think that it all really meshes together. There are so many different ideas in this film that try to come together, but I feel like one is prioritized over the other. Um, I was mentioning that the editing style, while at first it was a little exciting to see like really quick cuts back and forth, like really fast paced editing. Within like 5 minutes, I saw that that was pretty much going to be happening throughout the film. And I just felt so exhausted. And I started watching this at 7 in the morning one day. And I was like, my brain cannot do this right now. There's too much talking going on, too much French being spoken, too many movements, camera angles, crazy like editing shots, cinematography all over the place. There was just so much busyness here that all of that ultimately did not work. And at the end of the day, if this film is supposed to be taking on sexism and misogyny, I mean, these 2 men who just don't get it, like, one thing comes in one ear, it leaves the other, like, you just don't really learn anything about it, and I don't think that there's any realization that ends up coming from them. I also really don't know how these 2 white men can relate to women's struggles and know what women's struggles are, at the end of the day, so, I mean, it seemed kind of interesting from the premise, but I was honestly ready for it to be over.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I wanna say, I am not sold on watching it,
I did
but
my
maybe
job.
I will check it out. I mean, you know what? I do like to go into things and kind of form my own opinion, but I will say the chances of me maybe liking it, I mean, you brought up some pretty valid points. So I don't know how I'm gonna feel when I watch it, but I do like to, watch content for myself, figure out, whether or not I truly like it or not. But I'm gonna keep everything that you said in mind. I'm gonna keep it in the back of my mind so I can give it kind of
Yes.
a fresh perspective and take. But yeah, this
I won't
definitely
stop you.
sounds interesting.
It's a
Um,
lot. I'm pretty sure I wrote in a review, "If this sounds like a lot, it's because it is."
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, there's so much happening that I'm already confused and I haven't watched it yet, but that's just based on kind of your feedback, so I'm like, "Oh goodness, what will I get myself into when watching this?"
Just
Um,
have a cup of coffee or any caffeine next to you so you're, like, perky and ready to keep up with all of this.
okay, well, okay, I guess we'll I guess I'll see what happens. So, I'm gonna chat about a film that I felt like didn't have enough, which is kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum from you. So far, the film that I enjoyed the least is Alice. And it's wild because this was one that I was really, really looking forward to seeing. It stars Kiki Palmer, Common, and Johnny Lee Miller. I adore Kiki Palmer. Let me start off by saying that I think that she is literally one of the most talented people on the planet. She is hilarious, truly hilarious, a great comedian. She does incredible dramatic work when given the right script. And she is a really great singer, and I like a lot of her songs. So I just think she's so talented, and she was one of the biggest draws for me, watching this film. So the premise is really it's about a woman who is a slave in the antebellum South who escapes from her secluded plantation only to discover a shocking reality that lies beyond the tree line. And that shocking reality is that it is, in fact, the 1970s. So she is enslaved, here in Georgia. And she thinks like this is her only reality, right? Like, torment, abuse and a lot of things that she doesn't want to do, and she sees kind of no escape for this life. Things get real. She ends up, getting married, and she thinks her husband is murdered, and so through a series of events and a lot of issues between her and her the person enslaving her, I'll say. I really don't want to use the term master, but the person enslaving her, portrayed by Johnny Lee Miller, his name is Paul. She escapes. And when she gets over the tree line, she's like, wait, what? There's so many things. The world is so much more advanced than what she has seen on this plantation. There are cars, right? Like, Black people are free. She does not understand what's happening. So for me, the premise of this story, which is loosely based on true events, because the writer and director did take some liberties here and decided to kind of incorporate some fiction with the fact. For me, the script just wasn't enough. And I know that's a wild thing to say, but I felt like there could have been so much more depth with this story. I felt like when Kiki, when Kiki's character, Alice, finally, makes it over that tree line, she's not shocked enough for me. Like, it is 1973 and you have been enslaved your entire life, you and your family and everyone that you know. And we get to the 1970s and she just integrates seamlessly. Like, for me, that wasn't realistic. There's no way that you could, jump several decades and be in the 1970s and not just be completely and utterly shocked. We didn't get to see that. So it had me wondering, were there some scenes that were cut out just due to the length of the film? Because I really wanted to see her struggle with adjusting to the 1970s more than she did. Like, we see her being she's actually, I don't want to say she runs into, because it's kismet, it's definitely fate, Frank, Common's character. And he takes her in because he feels something for her, and he's like, why is this woman so shocked and so afraid, and what is this happening? And so he takes her in, he gives her clothes, she goes to his house, she reads some books. But like, even her dialogue with Frank is not enough for me. Like, there's just not a lot of depth in their conversations when it comes to the state of the world. And so, listen, the 1970s is far more progressive than what she's used to, but there's still a lot of issues happening in the 1970s for Black people at that time specifically that we don't even touch on or really address. And so, while there is a little bit of resolution with, Alice being able to confront Paul and confront a few other people who were really involved in her enslavement, it's still not gratifying for me. Like, I don't know any other way to put it, and I'm not even really sure that, like, when we get there, that it's really gratifying for Alice either, like, truly. So oftentimes I was watching like, man, I just want more from this dialogue, I just want more from the script, because I do think that the premise is so interesting that it had the capabilities to be something really great, but it fell flat in a lot of places for me, unfortunately. I will say though, for me, the performances, in my opinion, that Kiki and Johnny Lee Miller give are still really good, but they're only as good as the script. So, like, I think that they are two wildly talented actors, and they do the best that they could with what they were given. But if it weren't for their performances, I don't really know how the film would have fell, to be completely honest. So yeah, it is just such an unusual kind of plot line. So much so that I really had to do a lot of research on the true events because I had never heard of it, prior to, and it was really, really intriguing. But I just needed more from that script. I needed a whole lot more. And we spent a lot of time really focusing on her time in enslavement, that I really wanted to focus more on who she becomes. Like, we never actually get to see who she chooses to become. There are glimpses of who she chooses to become in terms of, when there's a moment, because, we as Black women adore our hair, and so it is our crown. And there's a moment where she is truly able to kind of shed the past through her hair and embrace the future through her hair, but it still doesn't tell me who she wants to become as a woman in this new, decade of life and new iteration of life. I mean, she has literally the world is her oyster at this point, and I'm just like, I want to see more of what she does with that. So that's really the story that I wanted to see. So yeah, I mean, listen, Emma, tell me, how did you feel about this particular film? Because, man, I have more thoughts, but we have a lot more to get into.
Honestly, I have to agree with so many points that you made. I also felt like there was so much missing. One big part of it was just there was no diving into any and all trauma that would be associated with, this huge change, and realizing that your entire life has been based on a lie, and like such a awful, awful racist lie. And there was like no time whatsoever spent on that. Like a few scenes here and there where it is kind of like, what the heck is, where am I? Like, but yeah, like I just feel like there would be so much distress in that situation for a long, long time, not just maybe an hour or two, which it seems to be depicted in the film. Um, and you're right. I mean, Kiki Palmer is a wonderful actress in so many different regards, and she does what she can do with this script. But she just deserved so much more. We all just deserve so much more with this film because it really is such a fascinating idea. And I mean, if it's loosely based off of, true events and a true story, it's like, well, my God, like how much more can you get into it? And I also too wonder like what may have been taken out from this at the end of the day. But I feel like they had plenty of time to work with, like even additional 15 minutes would have been great, or shortening the time that we saw of her enslaved, even if they cut like several minutes and several scenes of that out. I feel like that also could have helped get into more of the development with her in the present day.
Yeah, I think I just really wanted less trauma, more empowerment, and what that looked like once she was, free and empowered to live the life that she wanted. I wanted her to figure out what that was, because I think a
Mhm.
natural point in her life would have been, what do I do now?
Yeah.
The world is my oyster. I wanted her to I wanted to see the exploration of that. And, something else I really just thought of that, I kind of wish that a woman would have been the one to take her in. I think that that
Mhm.
also would have added some additional depth and different layers, and just kind of woman to woman trying to figure out life and how that was. So if it were a Black woman who would have, kind of ran into her that day and kind of rescued her and saved her, I think that also would have provided something else. I don't know, maybe something else that's missing, and I can't quite put my finger on what else is missing, or really articulated. But I think that that would have also, kind of given us a little bit extra for sure.
I agree. I agree. I think it would have been so beautiful and really touching in certain moments.
Yes, yes, absolutely. All right, so let's dive in to Fresh. I mean, like, Fresh,
Woo.
wow. So Fresh explores the horrors of modern dating seen through one young woman's defiant battle to survive her boyfriend's unusual appetites. So I will say, when we were doing our Sundance 2022 preview on the very first episode, I predicted that this film would be about vampires. Because I was like, this log line, what is this? And so then we started talking, and we're like, well, maybe it's zombies. And it is none of the above. Like,
It's something.
it's something, but it's not those things at all. So let me just say, I absolutely adored the chemistry between Sebastian Stan and Daisy Edgar Jones. I think that they had a brilliant chemistry, and this kind of, I don't really want to call it cat and mouse, because that's not, but it is almost in some ways a cat and mouse dynamic. Also in some ways, like they're doing a bit of a love tangle. Um, then it's a lot of creepiness. I mean, like, it's just the depths and the layers keep going and going. I enjoyed their characters immensely, but I will say the real MVP is JoJo T. Gibbs as Molly. 100%. Like everyone needs a Molly as their friend in their life for sure. So what did you think about Fresh? Like, what were your overall thoughts? And did you, like me, have kind of any pre-watch expectations, or did you think it was vampires? Because I did firmly.
I don't think I really had any pre-watch expectations. However, pretty much within like the first 5, 10 minutes of this film, I was like, yeah, something's up because this man seems a little too good to be true. Everything about him just seems so surreal." And we definitely go down a rabbit hole of some sorts. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil anything for those who still want to watch this film. I guess all I can say is really, like you said, the chemistry between Sebastian and Daisy is incredible. I feel like they both sunk their teeth into these performances in more ways than none. Um, Sebastian Stan, like, I don't think I've ever seen him in this kind of like dedicated role before where he just goes completely all in. He kind of scares me a little bit now. And I don't think I'll ever look at him in the same way. And then Daisy, too, like, she really holds her all against the many ups and downs of this situation that she finds herself in. I loved seeing the two of them on screen. Um, I think that for me overall, it wasn't one of my favorites of the film festival thus far, just because I feel like the writing wasn't all there all the time. I feel like once it kind of got started, you kind of knew the direction that things would go. Maybe not exactly everything, but I feel like you can map out, okay, this is kind of predictable how things are going to turn out. So I just wish that there was a little bit more aside from like the initial twists and turns. Um, but boy, oh boy, did it leave a really bad taste in my mouth afterward.
Well, let me tell you this. I will say that this is being billed by some people as the year of Sebastian Stan. He has a ton of projects coming out.
Sure.
When you talk about commitment to the role, 1000% he commits to this in ways that are delicious and psychotic.
Yes.
But I will say, Pam and Tommy is coming out soon. And when people see his commitment to that role as well, I think that people will start to take him more seriously, like as an actor, because he is really embodying these characters like so well. But
Yeah.
let me tell you, Fresh for me, so I'm not a traditional horror person, which is so funny. I mentioned that in the first one, but I wanted to check it out because I was truly intrigued by this log line. I was like, what is happening? And then also, as I've mentioned before, pretty much everywhere, modern dating is truly like the seventh circle of hell in a lot of ways. And so I was like, I am sold. Tell me about this film. And I agree that it was pretty predictable. But I actually was kind of okay with that. Like,
Hmm.
in terms of in terms of modern dating, it is pretty bad. Let me just say that. The apps are pretty awful. And sometimes you get people who are unstable. And that's really what we find here, right?
Yeah,
Like, to
yeah.
your point, not everyone is perfect. And when there is a guy trying too hard, these red flag antennas better be going off. Now,
Yes.
I will say I appreciate I appreciate Molly for being the one of sound mind in this scenario, because honestly, the decisions that Noah was making, I was like, now, girl, you know better than to turn your phone off. You know better than, like, it was things like, you just met this man. Why would
Exactly.
you agree to do this? Like, why would you agree to go away with him? Why would you? I mean, I just was thinking, girl, you are making all of the classic horror trope,
It's like, how
mistakes.
stupid can you be?
Yes, and you just met him. You just met him, and the only person and who, really just is loving you and concerned about you and wants to make sure you're okay is Molly. and you are ghosting her essentially for this dude you met 24 hours ago. That's what it feels like. I mean, it probably was not 24 hours, but it wasn't that far off either. So
Maybe
I'm like,
72.
right, right. I'm like, well, what are you doing? So the whole time I was truly yelling at the screen, like, Noah, girl, if we just don't make smarter decisions in this life, like we are not going to make it if we don't make smarter decisions. Like,
Just truly so many moments yelling at the TV like, "Oh my god, why are you doing this?"
yes.
And yes, thank God Molly was just like, "What? Just what? Why, who, where, when?"
And
Like,
what? Literally,
and yes.
she's asking the 5 W's, the 5 important questions that you need to ask. That was Molly the whole time. And I was like, finally, someone is asking these questions. Now, I will say it does dive a little bit into, certain women who allow certain behaviors for men to occur and they don't think that it's wrong. I like that we had that element as well because it is sometimes where you think that you can trust another woman with a scenario and you
Yes.
can't. And I was
Oh
like,
god.
ooh, ooh,
Those
so
moments were intense.
very,
I know
very.
exactly what you're talking about, and yeah. I will say, like, the suspense factors at certain points, like, they really nailed it, where I truly was, like, gripping my seat a little bit, starting to sweat a little bit too.
I will say it's very gory. So, for me,
Yes.
I am not a horror person, but not because of gore. So, gore doesn't bother me. There are just other types of horror that aren't. But even this was actually exceptionally gory. Like to the point where I
Mhm.
was like, okay, I can't watch this anymore. Like
I'm
I
out.
actually
Peace
might fast
out.
forward. Yeah, I was like, I might fast forward through this one scene because it's just so gory.
Mhm.
But I will say, the one thing I did lack in this, or I found to be lacking in the script was really when Sebastian Stan's character, Steve, I felt like there wasn't truly an explanation as to why.
I
Like, there's
agree.
a little bit of how he got to where he is, and we're really trying not to spoil. There's a little, I mean, because truly, if we do, that's the entire film. But
Exactly.
but we're really, I mean, I truly was like, yeah, why?
Yeah,
Why?
what is really the motivation behind a little, motivation that we see in this film, but, like, how is all of this sustainable? Why is this sustainable?
Right. And I was far more intrigued, I will say, because, and I don't, feel like this is a spoiler. I was way more intrigued about the other individuals involved. I think
Mm,
that would have been some intriguing plot points to add in
yeah,
because, no one is a one person island. And I just feel like that would have made the story a bit richer and we would have gotten kind of a little bit more of the why if we would have had that additional kind of, layer built in. But
exactly.
so let's rate it, out of 5 stars, what would you give Fresh?
Ah, I currently have it as 3 out of 5 stars, but maybe that might be a little too generous, I don't know.
Wait a minute. So why do you want to scale back?
Well, I guess just like, thinking back on it, like it hasn't really stuck with me like how a few other films have.
Mhm.
So maybe that's why it doesn't really deserve it. But okay, we'll stay at 3 out of 5 as of right now.
Yeah. So for me, Fresh is right now for me a 3.5. And
Okay.
I will say that's because I absolutely adored JoJo T. Gibbs as Molly. She's actually on this, kind of fantastic. She leads this fantastic show on BET. And I just think that like it was so nice to see her in this type of role and really kind of be the advocate of a friend that everyone needs in their life, particularly when you are doing online dating. I mean, I'm like, this is really the reality. So I think that, I would be able to give it more stars had they kind of intertwined social commentary
Mm,
on dating kind of more with the scenario that was happening. I mean, I think that we all got the impression that dating is bad, but like, I felt like there were so many additional layers to dating that we could have added in there to kind of make it more of a social commentary on horror, on the horrors of dating. Like, I think that piece is in there, but once you get past the fact that they're dating, we don't speak of it anymore. I guess that's kind of like the best way to put it, because something else kind of overshadows that aspects of the film. So, I felt like if we had just a little bit more of the horrors of modern dating intertwined in it, I think that that would have worked well. And you know what? I'm thinking now, maybe it could have been an additional dating scenario with Molly kind of intertwined in that to show,
Yeah.
different facets of the horrors of dating, versus kind of just this one singular incident with this one man,
Mhm.
uh, and kind of how he is essentially the worst human and dater on the planet. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Last man
Like,
I ever want to be stuck with in a room.
oh, 100%. Definitely never want to be
Never.
stuck with Steve in any capacity.
No.
So, from the horrors of dating, let's go to the challenges of being a teenager and maintaining relationships, parent child relationships. So, this is When You Finish Saving the World, which follows Evelyn and her oblivious son Ziggy as they seek out replacements for each other. And Evelyn desperately tries to parent an unassuming teenager at her shelter, while Ziggy fumbles through his pursuit of a brilliant young woman at school. So, what are your kind of initial overall thoughts of When You Finish Saving the World? Because this was an interesting title.
It was. I don't know if anybody really saved the world at the end of the day. Um, but what drew me to this, aside from two great actors, you have Julianne Moore and Film Wolfhard in this. It's Jesse Eisenberg's directorial debut. So I know him as a really solid actor who kind of gives us something new with every performance. I didn't really expect this type of story that examines a mother and son's very distant relationship and how they're total opposite ends of spectrums. Um, it was kind of something that I never expected from him, but I guess kind of makes sense since like a lot of his roles are so different from one another. So I thought it was for the most part, it was a strong directorial debut. However, I don't know, I still didn't really enjoy this film altogether. Um, the main characters are probably the two worst people. Talking about Sebastian Stan and how his character is awful, these can also join them. I do not want to spend any time with these two. They're just so like narcissistic. They are so self-absorbed. They just don't realize that are awful. I don't have any other way to describe it, but they are awful. Um, and I applaud Julianne Moore and Phil Wolfhard for giving us great performances where we do generally hate these people from the start of this film. But even though film is supposed to be focused on their relationship, I just feel like we barely see them together. So like I at the end of the film, I couldn't form like an emotional connection to either one. I wasn't invested in their like problems and them trying to reconciliate in whatever way they wanted to. So it was just like hard for me to really like get into the meat of what this film was supposed to be. So it totally missed the mark with that. And like their side stories, they were okay, but I just really wasn't invested in it. It never really tugged at my heartstrings. The end, I could see that they were trying for those like really big emotional moments, especially those last few minutes, but it just felt all too rushed. It just didn't work out for me. So, um, you know, I, I applaud actors turning into directors and wanting to give us really interesting films. I'm sure Jesse Eisenberg has some more interesting ideas, but this one didn't work all the way for me.
Yeah. So this 100% missed the mark for me. I agree. Listen, Jesse Eisenberg, I know that this was an audio book, prior to becoming a film. And I applaud his effort in the directorial debut, but I did not forge not a single emotional connection with these characters. Like, I mean, not in the slightest. And I do think that, Julianne Moore, I think that she gives a really fantastic performance of someone who is just so consumed and so wrapped up in, to the title's point, trying to save the world through the work that she does at this shelter, and really trying to save these individuals at the shelter, that she neglects everything and everyone else. And I just remembered watching like a dinner scene, between Evelyn and Ziggy and Roger, who plays her husband slash Ziggy's father. And I felt so bad for Roger
I
because I
know.
was just like, you have the worst family. Like, I
I
just
do.
remember the only empathy that I had for the
Was for
entire
him.
film was for him the whole time, because they are just so wrapped up in themselves. Ziggy is honestly insufferable. Like, I didn't have any other word for him. The way that he talks to his parents, the way that he moves about through the world, the way that he attempts to make friends, and, the way that he flirts with this love interest. Everything is so self-absorbed. It's about how many followers he has, the music that he's doing. He's never truly interested in anyone else or
No.
what they have to say or what they're doing. And so it falls flat for me when he's like on this quest to date Lila, when I'm like, you don't even care about Lila. Like, the reality is you don't care about what she has to say. You don't care about her as a human being. Like, I'm pretty sure you just think that she's attractive and she would be like a great arm piece for you. But the
Right.
reality is like, he's trying to do all of these things to woo her, but he doesn't actually care about the causes that she cares about and about the work that she's doing. And so I just was like, oh my gosh, Ziggy, no. And then here
Mhm.
comes Evelyn, who is utterly obsessed with Kyle and
Mhm.
trying to help him get into college and creating dreams. And, I get that they are trying to find, kind of replacements for each other in these other individuals. But it was borderline creepy how she was interacting with Kyle. It was making me uncomfortable, that I was kind of like, "Where is this headed?" at one point
Quite
or another.
inappropriate.
Yes, yes, the way she was interjecting into Kyle's life and just kind of their connections one-on-one, I was like, "Where's this headed? What are we doing?" No. But I say all that to say that, like, honestly, any stars I give to this film go to Julianne Moore, because I think that she was really acting up and down, round and round. I mean, she was dancing circles around everyone in terms of the acting, because you truly just also think that she's awful. Like, you're like, why? You're like, I mean, not as bad as Ziggy, because truly no character in this film was worse than Ziggy, in
No.
my personal opinion. But you're still like, she has a lot of growing to do, and this is quite odd, and please do not engage with this young man like this. And so, there are quite a lot of things happening that you're like, all right, don't do this and don't do that, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I mean, I I just think that the script is not as straightforward as it could be, and there's just a lot of dancing around in the exact same circles. Like, I kind of felt like we were going round and round with Evelyn and Kyle on the same things, that like a few of those scenes could have been cut. We were going
Mhm.
round and round with Ziggy and Lila on a few of the same things, those could have been cut. We have mostly the same fights between Evelyn and Ziggy all the time. Like,
Yeah.
let's shave that down. I maybe wanted to see, Roger interact with them just a little bit more. I mean, like, mostly it's him eating dinner by himself, or, one of the two of them telling him to, leave me alone. And I was just like, well, what about Roger's feelings? And
I
why can
know.
we incorporate Roger a little bit more? So, yeah, I mean, I just, I applaud the effort, but for me, the story was not engaging. It didn't stick. And, I really got to the end and was like, what was the purpose of that film? Like, and I think I asked myself that a few times during, but really when I got to the end, I was like, okay, no, truly, oh, at the end of this, if someone were to say, how did you feel about this film? Did it shift your worldview? My answer would be no, because it didn't create any type of view, like any additional view or context or any additional thoughts from me, really. So how would you rate this film?
I will give it a 2 out of 5 stars.
We are aligned, Emma.
Great.
We are aligned. I'm like, at best I could give it 3, and that 3rd star would fully be for Julianne Moore. I mean, again,
Exactly.
I think that her performance is outstanding, but I don't think, the script is not there enough for me to really even justify giving it that 3rd star. Like, while her performance is great, it's like, what was the script and what was the point? So, yeah, for me, it just wasn't as intriguing as I was hoping that it would be, because I am such a huge fan of Julianne Moore, but it was great to see that she's still acting down. It's just, the content wasn't for me.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
Well, that is it for this 2nd episode. I mean, any final words before, I close this out?
I mean, I have loved our conversation tonight. This was so fun. Thank you again for having me, and I'm just gonna keep watching movies. I mean, so many great ones that we got to talk about, not so great ones that we got to talk about, but that's really the beauty of these film festivals. You might stumble upon your favorite film, you might stumble upon the worst film that you have ever seen in your life. That's the fun of it all. So I'm excited to just keep on watching stuff.
Love it. Okay, and please plug your personal info one more time before we close out.
Yes, you guys can read my stuff through Next Best Picture and Mama's Geeky. Also, a few things at The Desert Sun that I write about entertainment wise. You can find me on Twitter at Emma_Sassic and on Letterboxd at Emma Sassic.
Perfect. Well, you know what? Please, please, please do not forget to subscribe to the Hollywood Critics Association's official YouTube channel right now so you don't miss an episode of HCA Presents the Festival Circuit, especially during this Sundance season. We still have one more episode to go. Remember to follow HCA on all social media platforms. I am your host, KB. I can be found on Instagram and Twitter only, Instagram and Twitter only, at the Lady KB. That's TheLadyKayb. You can also check out HCA's Peacemaker show. I am one of the hosts on that show, so please check that out as well. All 3 episodes of the HCA Women of the Movement after show are up and out now, so check that out. Check out that series. Really, really important series on, Emmett Till's mother, Mamie Till. It's very, very important, very heavy, but very necessary subject matter as well. And then you can find my work on my YouTube channel through the lens of Lady KB. Thank you again, Emma, so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it. Had a fabulous time. The women of HCA holding it down. So thank
So
you again
amazing.
for all your time, and have a lovely rest of your festival.
Thank you so much. You too.
Thanks.